Today at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, episode 37 of Politically Conscious returns. Democrats flee Texas to block a GOP power grab, strategic resistance, or desperate stunt. Meanwhile, Trump fires the labor stats chief over a bad jobs report, blaming her for inflated Biden-era numbers. Our experts cut through the noise to uncover the real political play. Catch us live on YouTube and Facebook. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. Welcome to Politically Conscious. Not sure what the double take there was, but we're going to get this thing started as I got my brother Leo back in this thing with me. Okay, I see what it is. I got it live, two places. I just figured it out. All right, that should have it fixed. Can y'all hear me without a double take? All right, cool. All right, good stuff. Got my brother Leo back in here. My man Emil Bryan is back after 2 weeks frolicking in Scotland.
I had to bless my family, man. I had to get out there with my niece and my sister to travel the world. It was great. And they were talking about our politics all the way in Scotland.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's see if we can get this show heard over here, man. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. Emil, real quick, give them a quick background of what you do. Let me just set up the format for anybody that may be watching for the first time. We basically react to different political clips from around the internet in reference to what's happening in politics and try to weed through the propaganda. And we got some stuff for you today. But Emil, tell them what you do, who you are. Leo, same thing for you. And then we're going to start with the first clip today.
Emil Bryan, I'm a political consultant, also an author and a speaker. One of my many jobs is to tell the truth and encourage the people that I counsel to do the same. Bad news does not get better with time, and it's especially so for politicians. So politicians, if you're listening, pay attention to the people. They need you to tell the truth. They can handle it. Please give them the straight dope so they can make better decisions and help you help them.
Sounds good. Leo, tell them what you do, brother.
I am Leo Smith, former Republican National Committee strategist and former Georgia GOP exec. I now do conservative, pro-democracy, pro-justice, but conservative government relations and strategy on all kinds of policy issues and the manifestation and policy that brings dignity and uplifts people. Follow me on Instagram at Leo Smith Politics.
I love it. Let's go ahead and get started with a big issue that's popped up here in the last couple of weeks, and I want to start here, if we will.
We'll get to you in just a moment. All right, Chair calls Samuel Garcia. Shall you register to testify on behalf of yourself on the revised congressional redistricting plan? Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Please give us your testimony.
I drove here 3 hours to get here. I came from Abilene, Texas. And if I'm willing to drive 3 hours to come here and talk, I'm going to ask you to get off your phone and listen to what I have to say. Whenever I found out, when you address somebody from the state legislature, you're supposed to call them the honorable this or the honorable that. Well, the word honorable means that you bring honor. And when you're elected, you're given that title. You should earn that title. Being honorable means that you do the right thing. Being honorable means that you will look at yourself in the mirror every day and say, why am I doing this? You got a call from Donald Trump. He told you to go find 5 seats. No, he got asked, how many seats? He said 5. He was asked on the news. You say, we don't have any maps. Well, how in the hell does Donald Trump know he's going to get 5 seats? I bet you anything there's maps that are there. Those maps are there, and they're sitting on his desk, and he's waiting for you to do it. This is ridiculous. A man a few days ago was arrested because he spoke too long at the lectern. He spoke too long, and y'all said, oh, he had to be arrested because he broke the rules. How many of you are going to get arrested for breaking the rules of mistreating the citizens of this country? You're breaking the rules. We are the citizens of this nation. We're the ones. It's supposed to be bottom up, not top down. I'm going to say this one thing to you. You know it's wrong. In your heart, you know it's wrong. And here's what I'm going to ask you. When your kids or your grandkids ask you one day, as a state representative, did you always do the right thing? You got two answers that you can choose from. You're either going to have to admit to them that, no, sometimes I did things just for power. Sometimes I did that. Or you're going to have to lie to your kids and lie to your grandkids and tell them you did it because you believed it, because you know this is wrong. This is wrong.
Hey, that's an engaged citizen, whether you agree or disagree with him. That's what an engaged citizen is. And I wanted to start there because at the end of the day, I want to remind people with the Politically Conscious Show, not only are we wanting to raise your conscious level in reference to understanding and knowing what's actually happening with politics and way through the propaganda. At the end of the day, our end goal is that one, as Emil already talked about, you are more informed, that ultimately is to be engaged and understand your power as a citizen. And so, well, again, whether you agree or disagree with that man, you have to see driving 3 hours to make that statement and challenge all of the legislative board to say, hey, let's do what's right from his perspective. Doing the show doesn't compare to that man doing what he did. I wanted to really highlight that from my standpoint. Mill, I'll start with you. Any thoughts on what you've seen? Let's, if you will, I know you know the breakdown. Kind of break down what was happening, because this is kind of prior to what's happening now. This was a couple of weeks ago when that guy did that. So just kind of give a breakdown of what's happening in Texas and give your thoughts on that guy as well. So give us that breakdown that you always are so good at giving us.
You know, Texas is an interesting case because they're very independent and they don't like the federal government, and so they treat the federal government with both disdain and love. It depends on the help. And so after what happened July 4th with the big flood, they were looking for the federal government to do something more than they were doing, and then that prompted a lot of activity within the state because the federal government was not responding the way it normally would have in another situation under another administration. Governor Abbott called a special session. Texas legislators meet 140 days every 2 years. So they were outside of that session time. And so the governor calls them all back and says, hey, we need a special session to deal with a lot of different things. The original intent did not include what we're seeing today with the potential for gerrymandering, but it did include what was going on with the floods and some other stuff that were very important to Texas at the time. And so the governor was trying to include a bunch of stuff that needed to be addressed. This citizen who drove 3 hours to make his statement was particularly concerned because it didn't look like the business at hand that the state was that the legislature was coming together for was actually the business that they needed done as the residents of Texas. That was the problem. And he said in his statement, we admit that you might do things for power, but that doesn't preclude the responsibility you have to us. We recognize that those things might happen back and forth. So you have someone who's willing to acknowledge that power is a motivator, but is still going to address the need of the people to have their legislature and their government respond to their needs. And that's where he was talking about, are you doing this for yourselves or are you doing this for us? And can we have some agreement that what you're doing doesn't have to reflect pure power politics? And to me, that was the power, that was the passion that he had, was getting out of this pure power politics and into, look, we recognize your need to do the things you need to do to maintain power, but are you going to overlook us along the way? And his point was, somebody gets arrested for speaking too long at the lectern as an example of what happens when power trumps the people. And that was his really passionate point. And I was very proud of him for standing up to those legislators and saying what he said the way he said it.
Hey, I've had that clip on deck for a couple of weeks, but I didn't want to do it without you, Emil. And just listening to you right now, I'm hearing, like you said, his real point even bigger than just the 5 seats that are at play. And we're going to continue that conversation as well. So glad to have you back, brother. Leo, your thoughts about anything Emil had to say, or what the again, that engaged citizen, which is something that's the name of your company, because that's how much you are engaged yourself into politics and understanding how it affects our daily lives. But any thoughts on that, man, or anything Emil had to say?
Indeed, in 2013, when I incorporated Engage Futures, it was about the idea and the foresight that America would be struggling as to whether or not it engaged people in a level playing field when it comes to power. Now, I'm not an originator of those thoughts. Even the founding father on the Constitution, name that you may not recognize, the last name Gary, where gerrymandering come from. Although his name was Gary, he came up with this concept in order to balance power between the people and the state, the Federalists. He did not like the Federalists, and so he was part of a party called the Democratic Republican Party that existed, believe it or not. And so that's how we got this whole gerrymandering thing, because he started looking for ways to balance power, okay, and take it away from the federal government and put it back with the people. But this thing has created a situation now where it's obvious, yes, congressmen and women are trying to keep their power, even if it hurts the constituents. And so here we are today in this place where we see this effort being taken place, where the citizens and what we do for the citizens as elected officials has become sort of secondary. Keeping your office has become primary, and fundraising has become even, primary to that. I would say then, serving the citizen is like tertiary. And yes, we've got a crisis here.
Let me play another clip, specifically in reference to the 5 seats. And again, I'll let you start on this clip. But this is another clip we're talking about now. We saw the citizen prior to what happened. This is on the verge of the vote, if you will. At least that's how I understand the timing of this clip.
I think that so many people will remember last year during his campaign, President Trump told one group that if they voted for him that time, they wouldn't need to vote again. Well, this is part of that effort to start the next election. It starts in Texas, but he clearly plans to extend it across America and pick up as many seats as he can with crooked lines instead of honest votes. The stakes here are much more important than me or any individual up here. We have the opportunity to serve briefly on behalf of our state. But what is at stake here is the future of American democracy. Because Trump knows if we have a Democratic House, it has subpoena power. It has the opportunity to set the agenda. It has the opportunity to have a big say in the appropriation process, the power of the purse, which these Republicans have increasingly turned over to the White House. So much at stake for the future of our country.
So again, the reason we have this show is to weed through the propaganda. I rely on you as the experts to kind of help me, right? I'm just moderate the show. So as I listen to that representative, he says the stakes is high, that as high as our democracy being at risk. Leo, do you agree with him? Is there a little extra butter on that conversation? But at the end of the day, he said, hey, you're trying for these 5 seats, and he relates it to Trump's previous campaign saying you don't have to vote again. I don't know if, again, is that something being added in, or is there some reality to what he's saying from your perspective?
Again, I mean, I'm glad I started out with the little history piece on how all this stuff got started, because he's presenting something that is about now, and that's important. But the idea that the Republicans are only doing this in order to, maintain power, this should not be new to us. I don't know what Trump meant by you never have to vote again. I mean, there's all kinds of speculation about what he meant by that, and he's tried to re-explain it. So I encourage people to Google it. What did Trump mean by that? I really don't know what he meant by it. I think he might have meant, according to him, he just meant that go do this and then you can go home, meaning not you don't have to ever vote again. But let's deal with what the gentleman just said. I mean, the fact is that, both Republicans and Democrats gerrymander. There are states like Illinois that are heavily gerrymandered. California itself, that there's a counter threat that the Democrats are making about how they're going to balance this. Well, the Democrats are obviously admitting that we have the power to gerrymander to whoever has control of the House at the time that the schedule requires, usually after census, to do this work can do it. In Texas, they're going to do a special session to do it. Now there's a threat amongst Californians that, hey, well, if you do that, then we'll get those seats back by further gerrymandering in California, which is already out of balance because Democrats, 43 of 52 seats in California, Democrats control. That's 83%, okay, of the polity, the voting population. However, when you do a national elections, Democrats generally don't win any more than 60% in California. So they're gerrymandered for a Democratic Party favor. Illinois, et cetera. There's some good states like Massachusetts and Wisconsin that are more balanced. Georgia had its own problems until some things got done that then Republicans, who really are, conservatives are the majority of Georgia. And so then it got balanced. But Democrats had gerrymandered Georgia in a weird way that Democrats were winning when this was a seriously red state. So it happens. And I just want to make sure our audience understand that this is not, as this politician is throwing out there, something that is unique to the absurdity of Republicans and the audacity of them. They do it too.
Yeah, again, if we're going to read through the propaganda, I recall having been down to the state capitol myself, speaking specifically about gerrymandering myself. And I basically, from my personal standpoint, not saying that I'm right, from my perspective, I called out both sides saying, let's quit calling it something that it is not. And because legally, for example, the way the laws are written when it comes to gerrymandering, it doesn't effectively say race. And I'm like, but let's still call it what it is when it's done via racial lines here in the South, whether that be Georgia or specifically what I was calling out at the time, what they did in North Carolina, where they made a little gerrymandering line real skinny just to capture that one little row and make sure that the district was all Black. And I was just highlighting, even though it's written legally, let's not pretend like that's not part of it, is what I said to all of those legislators at that time. Emil, your thoughts again about what Leo had to say and that cut.
So the Supreme Court struck down parts of the Voting Rights Act several years ago, and that put gerrymandering on steroids. And that's what you've seen since that ruling. And part of the reason why is you got to go back and look at the Voting Rights Act said that any state that had been under the jurisdiction of the Voting Rights Act for its historical exclusion of Black people had to submit its plans for redistricting to the federal government before they could institute those plans. And that kept those states relatively in check. Did it work 100%? No, it did not. In fact, it was probably a terrible way to do it, but it was better than what is happening now once those provisions were struck down, which is this gerrymandering is very much a political thing. Pennsylvania, not just the states in the South, but Pennsylvania was one where they were very clear. We're doing this to defeat Obama. We're doing this to make sure that there's a permanent Republican majority in our state legislature, which several states have now, to the point where it's a supermajority in many of those states, meaning that the governor can't even veto a Republican-led initiative that may not necessarily serve the 100% of the people. I say all of that because the history behind this is so critical. What Leo said is that both sides do it. And I am no fan of gerrymandering in the 21st century. We have states that do neutral, bipartisan, nonpartisan, and computer-driven redistricting. And those states tend to have more fair elections than the states that do it the old way, like Texas is about to do. On top of that, most states have a redistricting plan that it coincides with the decadal census. So every 10 years on the 0 years, the census is done. And then after that, the state legislatures with that data make their redistricting plans. To do it in between those census years is an indicator that you're seeing high politics play out. And the problem is that those high politics are now being influenced by the president of the United States. I'm not saying they don't do that, because the president is always considered the leader of the party, but it's very conspicuous this time. He's saying, Texas, go do that. And the Texas governor responded with adding redistricting to the special session. That is, I won't say unprecedented, but it's so uncommon that it raises everyone's ire, including the Republicans who are like, wait a second, did our state just respond to the president for something that we control? And now you have Republicans in the state of Texas wondering who's in charge of Texas. Is it Governor Abbott or is it the president? And now you also have, with this historical basis, this fear that is real in terms of we've seen the effect on our politics, that the redistricting will not just determine the fate of the next midterm election, but perhaps going forward, you may see more and more marginalization of certain groups of people, Black, Hispanic, perhaps other groups that are not necessarily in marginalized today, because this redistricting will go on and on until people stop it.
No, fair enough. Looks like we may have lost Leo for a second. Hopefully he gets back in here with
Did
us.
we?
We can't see you. Okay, so as long as we can hear you, we'll rock with that right now. But for whatever reason, if you can see us, we can't see you, just so you know. But we can hear you, so we'll just keep rolling till hopefully your video comes back on, whatever it's doing. But let's run through a couple of comments real quick as well. Just again, we want to make sure we take care of all those who are watching us. So we got a good comment from Elisa Baker that says, "Thank you guys, important work that you're doing." Kenny 77 says they have lost their minds. They are working to completely tailor design an autocratic fascist regime. No cap. We got another one. Come on, guys. We all know very well that man didn't mean that. Or he could just vote and go home. She laughed at that one. That was funny. Let's keep running with the comments real quick. We got another one from Steve Barber. This is right fight at the right time for Democrats. They should make this fight even bigger. Fight to win. All right, Emil, we got you back in here, Leo, as well. We got a direct comment to you, Leo's from Kenny 77. He says, "Leo, just because you can do it don't mean you should. Also, don't tell us that Democrats have already done. This is bizarre. Prior to dismantling the Voters' Right Act, they created, let me see, I can see if I can read this whole comment. They created, I think that was the end of his comment.
It's the next one. He finished it.
Okay, created back districts to correct. Okay, and then we got your girl, always piping in here. Thank you for always following us, watching us, Queen. Says it's not unique, but it's clear they are moving forward to how voting in the next election is aligned to this man under rule. This is insane and extremely racist to ensure votes don't count. I'm only going to say to all of those response that I agree with Leo in this sense. It is consistently done to the same level by both parties, and it just happens to be the party that's in power at the time that's working to keep back the other party. But I do think they both do it at the same level. You don't have to agree with me that if you're watching. I'm just highlighting that I do agree. When I went to the Georgia and said, "Hey, I'll call y'all all out. You all do it. You all use it to your advantage." That's just the history that I've seen, and it just varies at different times. And you're right, Emil. It is unique to have the president say it out loud, but we've highlighted on this show that part of what President Trump has done in this presidency is just pull back the curtain of the things that have always went on. This just so happens to be another one of them. For the sake of the show, I'm going to keep not the comments, go to the next cut and keep this thing moving. This is specifically something that just happened.
Breaking news, Texas Democrats just shut down Greg Abbott and Trump's plan to rig the next election. They just fled the state, denying Republicans the quorum that they need to gerrymander 5 new House seats and steal them. And they didn't do it alone. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker stepped up, offering support, shelter, and a message. We will not let Trump steal our democracy. This is bold, it's strategic, and this is how you fight back.
Emil, we'll start with you. You and Leo have been on the show where we talked about having proper oppositions. We've spent a majority, this is episode 37, but I would say at least half of these episodes highlighting that we felt like the Democrats were weak in being a strong opposition party. Like we've highlighted that so many times. So my question is, was this bold move in your opinion, the first real step up from the Democrats not showing themselves to be weak? Or as we highlighted on the promotions, is this just a big stunt? Your perspective of it.
So, we talked earlier on this show way back at the State of the Union about that one lone Democratic representative who walked with his cane out, and they were saying he was making a ruckus, and they ended up escorting him out and all that sort of stuff. Now we have the Texas Democrats 6 months later walking out en masse to prevent a quorum. And this tactic has been used before. It's considered a nuclear tactic because it is so hard to defeat by the majority. You walk out, you can't hold a session. If you can't hold a session, you can't vote. They started it in 1870. If you look at the TexasTribune.org, they've got a really good breakdown of how this particular tactic's been used in history in Texas, starting in 1870. They did it several times since 1979, 2003, 2006. So there's a history here of doing this. The problem is it is not a stunt, in my opinion. It is finally the Democrats showing up. They were willing to walk out for transgender athletes, and I'm not saying that's not a worthy cause, but what I'm saying is if the result of that was simply to ensure transgender athletes had what they needed to be successful, then surely a cause as strong as this warrants at least that response. And that's my point. If you're willing to walk out on something that affects a very small sliver of the population, you should be standing up and ready to support a measure that clearly it represents the will of at least the majority of Democrats, if not the majority of people who are saying this is unfair. So I commend them for that. And I want to see more of it because I hear there's rumblings that other states like Florida and Indiana might be doing the same thing. And those Democrats in those states need to be paying attention because it's time to stand up.
Leo, you said, you welcome a strong opposition party. And just to highlight this for those who didn't see that episode, and your bigger point was just at the end of the day, a properly opposed republic is much more effective for the people than getting so bipartisan that the power sway effectively allows the politicians to do exactly what you said at the beginning of this show, that they really no longer, we're secondary to your point at the beginning of the show. So how do you see this from your perspective? Is this the strong opposition you would like just from the standpoint of what you mentioned on this show before? And specifically, how do you see it in this moment?
No, I think we have to be a we the people government. And so when we see politicians being able to carve out their ability to be reelected rather than the voters getting to choose the politician. I think if I did the polling, conservative Republicans would also agree by majority that that is not the appropriate way for our we the people government to be constituted. So, this is something that needs to be fixed. Some states are starting to fix it, and I think it's good to look at states like Massachusetts and Wisconsin, seeing what they're doing, and then start to look at how can we normalize this situation based on where we are today. You see that this is most embattled in places where there's greater racial diversity because it's easier to pinpoint a district based on race just because you can almost just look at skin color and economic class. And with blacks, we tend to have been fairly hegemonic and with the Democratic Party. That's changing. So I think in some cases, this stuff's going to burn people. As a matter of fact, Speaker Hakeem Jeffries actually suggested as early as last month that he thought that Texas redistricting would benefit the Democrats because it would backfire on them just because of the numbers in Texas. In other words, I guess his thinking was like in Georgia, that in some cases, your state's just going to be what your state is. And it's hard to, but I think Hakeem was wrong, as he's been quite often, as a matter of fact, when it comes to his leadership. God bless the brother. I love him, but it's just like, man, you're really out of touch with how much people want change, both Republicans and Democrats. And right now, Democrats, the change they want to see people fight their principles for what vision they want. And finally, I agree with Emil. This is a move that I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't you do that? Just like Trump said to Abbott, well, if you can actually do it and it won't be against the law, why wouldn't you gerrymander so that we can keep our power? So the Democrats need to walk with the same swagger and stop coming with this kumbaya attitude. And when you claim you care about your people, I think that's a good thing because I think that'll make us improve gerrymandering because it'll make people realize that if both sides are using it in a way that puts a sledgehammer to the people, and the people will rise up and say, wait a minute, now y'all got to stop this because it's hurting us all.
Nah, good stuff. I know I saw a clip I'm not going to play it here, where Jasmine Crockett was highlighting that she's no longer, I guess, the representative for her district based on the way they want to draw the map or something to that effect. So good stuff. All right, let's keep this thing moving, y'all. Let's move on to
All right, so by now we all know that Donald Trump fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics for pointing out his weak job numbers that really did happen over the last 3 months. But of course, Donald Trump can't admit that that's why he fired her. And that's why he took to Truth Social 2 days ago to point out that the commissioner had faked jobs numbers before the election to try to boost Kamala's chances of victory. This is the same Bureau of Labor Statistics that overstated the jobs growth in March 2024 by approximately 818,000. But is that true? And it turns out that 818,000 fewer jobs came from a benchmark revision from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that covered April of 2023 through March of 2024 and was published last August. And of course, the Trump administration sent out National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett this morning, and when he was asked to provide hard evidence of why they fired her, he said this.
Oh, I mean, the revisions are hard evidence. There, for example, there was a 818,000 revision making the Joe Biden job record a lot worse that came out after he withdrew.
But here's the problem for Kevin Hassett and Trump for using that 818,000 number. And that's because they're arguing that the U.S. economy added 818,000 fewer jobs from April of 2023 through March of 2024 than were originally reported. But the commissioner they're blaming for these numbers wasn't even confirmed for her job until January 29th of 2024, which means February would have been her first jobs report she would have participated in. And because those 818,000 jobs started counting in April of 2023 and stopped in March of 2024, that means this commissioner only participated in 2 of those 10 jobs reports, meaning that 83.3% of this data took place before she took over. And the only reason they're allowed to whine about those 818,000 fewer jobs is because she put out this report in August of 2024. And about Trump's claim that she faked jobs numbers before the election to try to boost Kamala's chances of victory because the August and September numbers were 112 higher than they were revised, those revisions came in before the 2024 election, and she's also the person who put out a jobs report just 4 days before the 2024 election that said we only added 12,000 jobs in October. That was the worst jobs report since COVID. So again, there is no logical reason behind firing this woman other than Trump needed an excuse for his terrible jobs numbers and how he is running the economy.
Well, we know Trump, like Beyonce would say, has a big ego. Now, the reality is, again, keeping it truthful and no propaganda here, anybody that run for president got a big ass ego. like you don't even try to be the leader of the entire world if your ego don't fit the job, right? But at the same time, we understand Trump's ego is even bigger. Leo, I'm going to start with you here because you know me, I'm a data person, love the numbers, and it looks like this was a straight ego hit based on that clip showing that she wasn't even related to what he accused her. He actually wrote a tweet of why he fired her, highlighting that she was, inflating the numbers on Biden. We absolutely understand Trump tries to get his cronies in there, just like he got his personal lawyer on the judgeship just a week and a half ago. We talked about it on the last show with Emil. But this was just a straight hit and a cover up for his ego not being able to accept that the job market doesn't look good, in my opinion. I don't know any other way to cut it. How do you see it, brother?
Well, I mean, look, there's all kinds of opportunities to distract the people and the media and influencers and podcasters, et cetera. They are part of the people benefiting from just having all this sensation around everything. The guy in the clip, I'm going to disagree with him a little bit on something because he makes it sound like Trump is doing something that's not within his power. When, whether that data is real or false, Trump has the ability to fire anybody in the executive branch. He is the CEO. So that's the executive branch. Trump isn't in the legislative branch. He's not in the judicial branch. And that job is under the executive branch. So look, is that honest? Is that fair? Is that you should take seriously the election of a president, because he can do stuff like that, even if it's false. And even if you consider it corrupt, but is it legal for him to fire her? Yeah.
I don't think I heard that sentiment. I think Emil's curling his tongue up, his lips up at you because he didn't hear that sentiment as well. The thing that they're just highlighting is there's no other way to call it that he just took her out. And I'm not even talking about a right or wrong thing, but he put out his propaganda, and we're reading through the propaganda, and he just got rid of it because his ego can't take the numbers. I think that's just calling it what it is. Go ahead, Emil.
He's controlling the narrative, and that's what the clip showed 100%. He wants to say that she was foul. If she was foul before this jobs report. She was foul before. And here's the thing. Her behavior is consistent. When she saw the need for correction, which they always do in the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is not some unprecedented action that she took. They always go back because they do preliminary. They release the preliminary, then they go back and crunch numbers again, factor in a bunch of stuff, that other data that needs to come in for them to do an update. And sometimes that update means no change. Sometimes they adjust up or down. But this one was drastic. And it was drastic because the data was so nebulous in this period. What are we seeing? We're seeing tariffs, and we're seeing all this stuff happen and all these fluctuations back and forth. So the jobs market is looking really scary right now. What's not highlighted in that jobs report that I saw in my research was that of the greatest job growth, over 200,000 jobs in that report were under healthcare. What did the one big beautiful bill attack? Medicaid, Medicare, and other healthcare funding, which is going to trickle down to the one area that had a consistently large jobs growth. What she did was no different than what she had been doing since she's been tenured back in 2024 as the head of the Bureau. So now that she's done her job, she's done it well, all of a sudden she's now a partisan crony. That's complete crockery. And I'm not going to call it anything else.
Did somebody lose a job off of merit, Emil? Like this, I thought this is the merit-based administration, man. You know, I'm never gonna let them ride for what they did with misnomering DEI and getting rid of the guardrails, and we're watching it have effects right now that people are not acknowledging. I'm never gonna let that go because the facts are the facts. They continue to get rid of people who have the merit to keep their job and keep putting people in the job who do not have the merit. But that word is gone away now.
You called out the case in point.
Because of how they controlled the narrative. I'm just calling that what it is.
The president's personal lawyer is now a judge on an appeals court, and that person had no business being appointed as a judge, period. The person who is highly qualified and has proven herself over and over again to be a straight shooter. The data drives her decisions. She releases the data, and all of a sudden, today, she is now persona non grata. It's clear to me that it's not about merit. It's not about your accomplishments. It's about who you serve and how you serve them.
There's no doubt that look, I'm not even going to I'll co-sign that 1,000%. No, it's very clear. And I think most Republicans realize that they're not, edifying or operating a government that's based on merit. I don't think that most white Americans believe in meritocracy in a plain sense. I'm just going to say that because I don't think they even know what it is because they've never had to really actually operate accordingly. So let's just be real about that. And I don't care whether they're progressive left in white elites or progressive, or conservative right. White elites. They like the advantages that they've gotten, and it's hard for them to see things otherwise. Our ideas of merit are very skewed and race related as it comes to controlling how merit operates. America hasn't really found that baseline yet in a true way. But I think, you go too far to the left with some of your DEI programming, and there were people hired in jobs that weren't qualified because of race. They were. But at the same time, they were like, whoa, that's acceptable because that's been happening for white folks all along. And so it is a balancing thing. And I think we need to make sure that we do edify when it happens on a meritocracy. When we do see meritocracy happen, we can talk about that. But this is going to be a battle for a long time because white Americans are just finally starting to get to another phase of feeling threatened by level playing fields. And now the playing field is going to be pushed the other way. So all this bad acting that we see, we can expect more of it. People when cornered fight harder than when they're not. White America culture and the advantages that they've had, they feel cornered. And so we're going to see more and more of this.
No, that's good truth saying. All right, let's continue with the data. And this is the best data hog on the internet to me, brother by the name of Doss Discourse. And again, the data just is what it is. And this is in relations to what we just happened, the firing because of the job market and how it's looking. And I thought this was just a good thing because, well, let me just play the cut, and I'll give you my thoughts after the cut, and we'll
the United States
talk about it.
The United States Bureau of Labor Statistics just reported the weakest job growth numbers in 5 years after just 6 months with Donald Trump in office. And Trump responded by saying, today's job growth numbers were rigged in order to make the Republicans and me look bad, which is literally just a conspiracy that he made up. So that's one conspiracy. And then I get comments like this: Republican policies are the only ones that actually help the economy. Democrats break it, Republicans fix it. And they both keep the cycle going on purpose just to stay in power, which is another conspiracy. And I've said this a million times, but the idea that Republicans are better at handling an economy is just a conspiracy. And that's annoying to me because
everything is a conspiracy when you don't know how anything works.
The only thing that can save you from your ignorance are the data. So I want to equip you with the data. Our GDP is always higher under Democratic presidents. This is not me saying this. These are the data saying this. Republican presidents have an average GDP growth rate of 2.5%. Democratic presidents have an average growth rate of 4.3%. Here are the GDP rates of the last 72 years of presidents. Do you see how the blue bars are longer? Blue, you see? There we go. We're learning things. The unemployment rate is always lower under Democratic presidents. Under Republican presidents, the unemployment rate has actually risen by an average of 1.1%. Under Democratic presidents, the unemployment rate has decreased by 0.8%. The stock market performs better under Democratic presidents. These are the data. 9 of the 10 poorest states in America are Republican states driven by Republican economic policies. If their policies work so well, why are their states so poor? But it is not only the case that Democrats are better at handling the economy, Republicans are actually just bad at it. 10 of the last 11 recessions happened under Republican presidents. Since 1953, year-over-year inflation averaged 4.27% under Republicans, 3.8% under Democrats. Argue with your mama. Republican states have such poor economic outputs that they contribute very little to the strength of the American economy. Blue counties account for 71% of the entire United States GDP.
Shirts, tanks, totes. Link is in bio.
Man, Leo, he brought the pain. And the thing that I want to mention in this, because Montoya was out for a minute and I'm just filling some space, is that none of what he said is wrong, but it's not accurate either. And that's the thing that I want people to learn from these kinds of breakdowns. A Democratic president that takes over from a Republican administration inherits the momentum of their policies for at least 1 and usually 2 years. So you got to really, if you want to see a Democratic president and their policies play out, you got to look at the second half of their term, whether that's they have 2 terms in office, or like you had with Joe Biden, he was in office for 4 years. We're just now seeing some of the effects of those policies play out. And you saw a stark reversal of many of those policies when President Trump came in. So you won't see the effect of those as a normal handover would have happened between administrations. So you have to go back to President George W. Bush or President Obama to look at their second terms to see how their first term policies impacted their second term of presidency. That is the real indicator. So his breakdown, which I thought was really good, was also inaccurate in that unless you account for those transition times of 1 to 2 years after that president has been in office, you are probably not getting a fully complete and accurate picture of the effect of those policies.
I can make your point further.
Them blue lines are so far ahead, though. I don't know if you're gonna catch up though with them.
Well, look,
talking about, man. I'm just I'm not on no side. I'm just Daw's Discourse does this for a living. I'm just highlighting that this man he gets paid to do what he does. Just to throw that out there. Highly recommend following him again because I'm a data guy too, but just an enthusiast. This guy does it for a living. And I don't know exactly how you would capture that. Thank you. I'm not even fighting you, Emil. I think what you're saying is actually very specific, but just in general, the consistency of what happens over the last 50 years, I want to make this point, and then I'll let Leo jump back in. The point that I want to make is something that you and I and Shelly were talking about when we started the show. Remember, I kept consistently saying, I am blown away at how the narrative is that we have a bad economy right now. I'm talking about coming into when we first started the show, because, and remember in the middle, I was saying, why the hell are the Democrats not talking about this number, this number, this number, this number, this number?
100%.
And again, I wasn't on the side. I'm just talking about the facts of the matter. I'm just like, and then the thing that I highlighted, because I'm in beer vending, very discretionary income, I'm like, no, the economy's doing well because people don't spend this much money on beer when it's not. I've experienced that being in this industry for a decade. So I'm kind of a little rough draft indicator of what's happening. Right now, beer sales are slowing down. Again, people spend extra money on that type of stuff when they have it, or if they don't, that's where you see their money retract first. So I'm just saying, I came into the show, episode 1, saying I am confused at why people think we have a bad economy right now. And I just feel like this discourse just laid out 50 years of what I'm seeing. I'm just throwing that out. Go ahead, Leo.
No, I appreciate that Emil would point out that this is more nuanced than just putting graphics on a T-shirt. Because obviously, if you took a picture on which party has led to a more stable economy in the past 10 years, you might get a totally different picture with Biden.
No, you will not. Leo, I've been watching the numbers. You will not get a different picture.
Here's the other thing.
If you're in a certain tax bracket, you're loving it.
Right. Sure.
But just for the average American, the last 2 years, that was a narrative.
Let me share something with you that will blow your mind. People don't just vote on the economy. I know we keep saying it's the economy, stupid. Okay. People vote on the basis of fear. And most of the time, and a lot of times, Republicans have been asked for when fear was great, wartime, those kinds of things. And of course, at wartime, the economy is going to be worse. So these things all matter. And I think that's what Emil was alluding to, is more nuanced than that. Americans just need to basically understand that one party is going to yield more to power and money. The other party, if they're doing their job, now, that's what we haven't seen very clear answers on this. But if they're doing their job, you're going to see, in some cases, better job reports on the Democrats because they're less likely. Look what Donald Trump's doing. He's cutting jobs in the federal government like you won't believe, whereas Democrats are more likely to create jobs through the federal government. That alone is a severe, parting of ways and strategy that Democrats should embrace if they really believe that the federal government should create jobs and prosperity, et cetera, for the people. Republicans don't embrace that idea. They don't like it when the federal government creates jobs.
Yet here's a challenge to that. Here's the challenge to that, Leo, that I'll just put onto you, and that is that under both Clinton and Obama, they actually reduced the size of the federal workforce and still had growth in the economy. So the way they do it is also important. Trump is doing this mass firing, wholesale, looking for ways to fire people faster. Whereas Clinton and Obama, when they reduced the federal workforce, they did it through attrition, allowing each office to figure out its own plan to bring down the number of jobs, but without necessarily impacting the work. What you're seeing now is that the federal government is damn near paralyzed in some ways, and certainly by design, say FEMA, it's paralyzed. And so this is a really big, important part of the economy, that not only are they people getting paid, but they're infusing those dollars back into the economy through their disposable income, as well as creating jobs by that infusion of capital. So there's an effect that those jobs have. And what I want people to understand in this kind of conversation is that Democratic legislators in the House and the Senate who control the purse strings are also just as responsible. So a more responsible analysis would also be who controls the House and Senate and who controls the presidency and jobs under those, right? Because now you're
versus just looking at who the president is at the time.
Right.
Great
you
point,
need to see all of it consistently as a package. The president makes policy and executes policy, but Congress writes the laws and spends the dollars. And
here's an operational thing. Yeah. And I love it what you're saying. So, and the other thing, Emil and Montoya, is that we got to, okay, that's the what, right? Okay. So what? Well, the fact is that if voters in Georgia, in the first district of Georgia, down in Savannah and along the coast, if they feel like jobs are being threatened down there so much that they're feeling the pain in their homes, then they should rise up and say, hey, we're losing jobs. Now, that does happen, but you have to give those people the power. That's why these attempts at working people party and things like that, they usually people try and shut them down because they really might represent the voice of those people who are impacted by this. And that will force congressional leaders, Republican and Democrat, to have to go back and fight against the executive branch when they're trying to stop job creation from happening. The great example of that is President Biden's leadership on the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the IIJA, where they're bringing in a lot of clean energy jobs, et cetera, et cetera. It just wasn't about climate. It was also about Biden's attempt to infuse money in a way that not only might create some climate innovation, some clean energy innovation, but also created a heck of a lot of jobs. Well, a lot of people don't realize that all it took was a little nudge that a couple of Georgia state reps who are Republicans, who don't want to have anything to be doing it. They don't want to be heard that they're advocating for any Biden plans. Well, guess what? They are quietly writing letters because their constituents, white people constituents are saying, hey, wait a minute. This Kia plant down here, this Hyundai on the border down here in South Georgia, and I'm up here in North Georgia, and we got all this stuff going on in North Georgia that we got through the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, all of a sudden, my constituents are losing jobs. Now, the difference is those constituents are showing up and writing letters and making phone calls and going down to the baseball game and say, hey, man, my cousin lost his job, and they got contact and engagement. And that engagement is making those Republicans now fight back for some of that implementation of that money that Trump cut. We all got to get more focused on doing that kind of action. And I like that no matter where it comes from, because I think we're stronger as a nation when our bottom can rise up.
I love it. Go ahead, Emil, real quick. I got a couple cuts to get y'all through and get y'all out of here.
No problem. What I'll say, Leo, is a cosign, but the thing that, the thought that fear trumps economy, it's kind of a twin-edged sword. Yes, it does, but no, it doesn't. Because when people are scared about the economy, they will vote hard. They will vote. You tend to see that. But when the economy is soaring, they also vote because they don't want to see it disrupted. So when you see a disruption in the economy and you see fear injected into the marketplace as a factor in voting, now you're taking those economic issues away from people's forefront, and you're putting something in place of that. And the problem is you have to continue to stoke fear in order for people to stay in that mindset. So now we have fear of immigrants, then you have fear of criminals, then you have fear of this and that and the other. And so that fear thing begins to wane, and people are going to start to your point, Montoya, people are going to be at the baseball game, they're going to be at the football game, and they're going to start asking hard questions because they're not seeing the fear go away, but they are seeing their houses in foreclosure. They are seeing their grocery bill go up, but their wages aren't going up. They are seeing that their cousins and brothers and sisters are having trouble making ends meet, but they're not seeing the boogeyman going away. So this is a very important point, that fear and the economy go hand in hand, but you can only use one well over the long term.
Well, I'll just say this, and we'll go to the next cut. For propaganda that I've experienced in my lifetime, I think the narrative surrounding the economy going into this election, the propaganda was such, it was equal to, if not better than, when Ronald Reagan pulled the welfare queen back out in 1979 and tricked America into thinking that more black people were on welfare than white people. So that's how good that propaganda was, in my opinion. Kenny77 says, Emil, you on our side. Stop helping them. LM laughing my ass off. It is the president has very little to do with the economy, true, but he does have the power to destroy or influence like this one is doing. But no, absolutely. Yeah, I always tell people we give the president way too much credit and discredit for the economy because to a lot of points that y'all have already made. So I won't continue y'all points. A lot of good fodder in the y'all go back and continue going back and forth in the comments. I'll try to get a few more up, but we're near the end of the show. So let me get these last cuts out here. All right, this happened, and I'll kind of just let it play itself out, and I'll figure out who has to respond first. I'll figure it out as it's happening.
Dog here today for Monday, August 4th goes to President Donald J. Trump. Now, if you haven't
All right, hold on.
Donkey of the day for Monday, August 4th goes to President Donald J. Trump. Now, if you haven't heard, I was on Lara Trump's show, My View, on Fox this past weekend. Drop one of the clues bombs for Lara Trump. She's been a guest on Breakfast Club before, so I had no problem showing up to her program. You know, I'm one of those silly rabbits who still believes in the First Amendment, okay, freedom of speech. Thankfully, Lara is a Trump who still believes in freedom of speech because her father-in-law, the 47th president of the United States of America, did not take too kindly to some things I had to say. Now,
how do you rate his presidency so far?
I wouldn't give it a good rating,
Why not?
Simply because, the least of us are still being impacted the worst. Like when you look at something like, the big, beautiful bill, that's something that, I'm going to benefit from because of the tax bracket that I'm in. But, there's going to be so many people that's hurt by that bill. And, anything that takes away Medicaid from people and is going to put people in a worse financial situation than, they were previously in, I'm not for it.
I mean, where is the lie? Trump's big, beautiful bill is going to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. Okay, the other issue I said on My View with Lara's Trump is I believe traditional conservatives are quietly staging a political coup to take their party back from MAGA. I explained this to y'all a couple of weeks ago.
Traditional conservatives are going to take the Republican Party back. I think there's a political coup going on right now in the Republican Party that people aren't paying attention to. This Epstein thing is going to be a way for traditional conservatives to take their party back. I think that they know this is the issue that has gotten the base riled up. The MAGA base isn't letting this issue go. And for the first time, they know they can probably take their party back and not piss off the MAGA base. I think they're going to do that.
Just a conspiracy theory I have. It just feels like traditional conservatives who lost the party to Trump could use this opportunity to get it back because the MAGA base wouldn't be upset at all if they impeached Trump and voted to remove him because he's in the Epstein files. Trump didn't like any of that, so he replied with a long-ass post on Truth Social.
The very wonderful and talented Lara Trump, whose show is a big rating success, put racist sleazebag Charlemagne the God. Why is he allowed to use the word God when describing himself? Can anyone imagine the uproar there would be if I used that nickname?
We'll study your lessons.
He's a low IQ individual, has no idea what words are coming out of his mouth, and knows nothing about me or what I've done. Like just ending 5 wars, including a 31-year bloodbath between Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, where 7 million people have died and there was no end in sight. He did not know that. Or India and Pakistan, or wiping out Iran's nuclear capabilities, or closing the horrendous open border, or creating the greatest economy where prices and inflation have come way down, and where stupid and corrupt Joe Biden set the record for doing the worst job as president ever. But this dope Charlemagne would vote for Sleepy Joe or Kamala? ? Remember, 1 year ago, our country was dead, and now it's the hottest, and he capitalized hottest, country anywhere in the world. MAGA.
Now, the personal insults, I don't care. He called me a sleazebag. I looked up the definition of sleazebag. Says it's a disgusting or despicable person. Depending on who you ask, that may apply to me. Okay, I personally prefer friendly neighborhood a-hole. He said I'm a low IQ individual. I don't know. I've never taken an IQ test. He said I have no idea what words are coming out of my mouth. Absolutely true. Okay, I've been surprising myself my whole life. Like, damn, I actually said that? Now, let's get to your claims. He said I don't know anything about him ending 5 wars. Mr. President, nobody knew that. Because it's not true. All right. There is zero evidence, nothing credible whatsoever that says President Trump played any role in ending the ongoing, keyword, ongoing conflict in the Eastern DRC or in Rwanda. Okay. America has not brokered any major peace deal between the DRC and Rwanda during Trump's second term. And wiping out Iran's nuclear capabilities, you did pull off a significant strike, but it didn't eliminate Iran's nuclear capability. Saying you wiped it out is an overstatement because according to reports, no enrichment facility was destroyed and Iran's nuclear threat is still very active, and some experts argue it's more dangerous now due to a lack of international.
Leo, I'll let you respond. We're at this point, second term, we're not surprised. I'll say unfortunately, because again, being a former military member, I still want to have this, in a sense, respect for the office. But obviously, during his second term, Trump.
That's long gone, brother. That's long gone. The sense of respect for the office is long gone. A 9-year-old kid who likes to bully and, tell lies about what he's accomplished. That's our reality. And so let's kind of I'm not saying make it normal, and we don't want to normalize it, but that's what we got. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Making stuff up. Yeah. Clearly, I was listening to that for the first time and hearing that for the first time. I think is hilarious. When I heard that stuff about Congo and stuff, I almost cracked up inside because it's like Trump just makes stuff up. He really does. And everybody knows that. The Republicans who support him knows that he makes stuff up. And the fact is that if he were actually doing those things, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who wants to see America have less footprint, and a lot of Republicans, a lot of libertarians want to see America have less footprint in foreign intervention, they would be screaming at Trump for doing it. So even if that were true, it would make him unpopular with a lot of Republicans if it were true. So, he's making stuff up. He's just winging it whenever he feels like winging it. He doesn't like anybody getting media attention. I guarantee you that Lara Trump's going to get a little hand slap, and, for doing that. But, this is the opportunity. There is that movement that Charlemagne spoke about. And that is that Republicans are and have looked for opportunities here and there where they could lift our heads out of the holes, come out like, the gopher and to see whether or not, was it Punxsutawney Field? Occasionally we stick our heads out and go, is it safe to play? Most of the time we get whacked. And, but I think more and more you're seeing folks come out and say, okay, we can't wait for this guy to be gone. And we can go back to reassert. Now, I don't want the old Republican Party because I think it invited Trump in. So I think that's an issue just looking forward as a conservative that I would look to say, how do we make it better so this kind of despot doesn't end up taking over our party again?
Emil, your thoughts? We're about to go into our extra innings. I only got one more clip, so it won't be much longer if y'all both have about 10 minutes, maybe not even 10 minutes. But go ahead and give your response, and then
I appreciate Charlemagne the God. I'm usually not a fan, but I appreciate that he was speaking truth about his economic bracket and the fact that he's going to prosper while people that came from the economic bracket he came from will not. And that's a very important distinction he made. Like, he's like, I know what's going to happen, and I'm still against it because it's not me who needs this. It's the people who were like me years ago who are there now. I'll also say that, gosh, I hate doing this, but under President Biden, there was a significant push to create peace between Rwanda and Congo. That conflict did not kill 7 million people. The internal conflict within DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is where those 7 million people come from. But on 27 June of this year, Secretary of State Marco Rubio did oversee the Washington Accords between Rwanda and Congo. There was a signature by by each country's foreign secretaries to begin the peace process. So there is some truth to that one conflict, but it also started well before this year. The other thing that I'll say that Charlemagne was right on is it's time for the traditional Republican Party to go back to before its Southern strategy roots. That's before Nixon. I like Ike, and I'm not a big fan of everything Ike did. In fact, I got some real heartburn with Ike in many ways. But the Republican Party under President Eisenhower was much more open to ideas than the current version of the Republican Party. So if they're going to go back, I'm going to ask them not to go back to the Reagan era, not to the Nixon era, but to the Eisenhower era, where they had some real fingers in many different pies. The Eisenhower Republicans were pro-labor union. Believe it or not, that was a thing. Back then, they were pro-labor union. So you can have a Republican Party that is pro-labor union and still be conservative. What does that mean for America? It means that if you have a Republican Party that looks more like what it was under Ike, you may have, for instance, a broader tent under which people can call themselves conservative than they do today.
All right, good stuff. Here's a great cut. It's a little longer. Again, thank y'all for the extra few minutes here. But it's Madair Hassan talking to Jon Stewart on their individual podcast. And again, I think it kind of is a nice way to wrap up what we talked about. I had one more cut that highlighted that Obama's role in currently what's happening with the Israel cut. You and I don't know if y'all recall, both of y'all were kind of had a little argument about that. I was going to try to bring it up, but I don't know if we got time to bring it up. I don't know if y'all recall it or not. But let's go ahead and end with this clip. Oh, one more comment real quick. Thank y'all for all the comments. I did want to highlight just another one from Lisa Baker. I think she may be a new watcher. She says, why are we acting like the president doesn't have any power and influence over the other branches? I just wanted to kind of give a quick response to you. I certainly was speaking about the economy itself, and I think that's what I heard both Emil and Leo talk about. So I hope that our impression is that the president doesn't have control over the other, have influence over the other branches. I did highlight very little control over the economy. So I don't know if that comment is what had you say that, but I just wanted to throw that out to you real quick, Queen. But thank you.
No, I think she might be wisely,
Okay.
and I think her comment is well taken. That when I said that he's in charge of the executive branch, which he is, but certainly he looks for ways to influence all the other branches too. And
Okay, fair enough.
there is amongst conservatives the feeling that he has overreach in that regard as well. So,
No, good stuff. All right, good. Thank y'all for all the comments. Sorry that we can't get to all of them. Here's our last cut for today.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk went to war, most richest man in the world. Donald Trump says, I'm going to cancel his contracts. And immediately Musk deleted his tweet saying he was in the Epstein files and has gone pretty quiet by Musk standards.
That's right.
Why didn't Joe Biden do that? In fact, the opposite. Chuck Schumer hosted Elon Musk in his office in the Senate a couple of years ago. This guy declared war on the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party said, would you like some more contracts, sir? Right? That was an insane approach to Elon Musk. Trump showed that you can actually take on the richest man in the world if you're president of the United States. He did it. There is a template for it. Another example for Senate Democrats, when they were trying to get the minimum wage rise through, the parliamentarian said, you can't put it in the bill. I was on MSNBC at the time. We did multiple segments about the freaking parliamentarian. No one knows who she is. She wasn't elected by anyone. Chuck Schumer said, can't do it. Parliamentarian said, no. This time round, the parliamentarian said, well, you can't do some stuff in this big, beautiful bill. The Republicans said, get lost. They wouldn't even meet with the parliamentarian. Right. So the template is there. If you want to get shit done, you can. The problem is Democrats don't want to get shit done and they hide behind institutional excuses. They say we can't do it because of parliamentarian, but really they don't want to.
No, that's interesting though, because that says something different. In your mind, they don't actually want it. Because my feeling is,
let's not make sweeping statements. Some do.
Right.
And some are beholden to their donors.
But this is where we get into the Merrick Garland is at fault or the way that Democrats govern. I still, as much as the ACA got some more people, some health insurance, it never addressed the rot at the basis of our healthcare system that allowed, these insurance companies to make. So basically what the Democrats said was, we understand that one of the greatest threats to liberty and freedom in this country is poverty and not having healthcare, and it limits your choices and you can't leave jobs and all these other things. But instead of dealing with that, here's what we think we can do. Convince insurance companies that if we guarantee you billions of dollars in a fire hose of money, that you'll pretend to offer people a good alternative.
Not just insurance companies. The plan was to win over Republicans, right? Barack Obama was bent on winning over Republicans.
Right.
And that's why he borrowed a Mitt Romney plan. Obamacare was fundamentally a version of Romney Care in Massachusetts.
Right.
And he thought this will win over moderate Republicans. Instead, they spent the next 10 years obsessing over Obamacare. It became a dirty word for Republicans. They never gave him any credit for doing a very moderate conservative style proposal for healthcare reform. And this is the problem. They will never give you credit. Stop trying to appease them. I think that any Democrat who in this current moment says the word bipartisanship should be immediately primaried, right? It just shows you're not prepared for this moment we're in. This current modern Republican Party will never credit you for anything. Joe Biden bent over backwards to his old friends in the Senate who he hung out in the gym with for decades. They all went against him. No one gave him any credit. All of them voted against his major legislation, which was bipartisan legislation, apart from the infrastructure one. So it was a fool's mission to do that. By the way, you said something earlier about exposing the cracks. The fundamental thing Donald Trump has shown us is that the rules of American politics don't have to apply if you don't want them to apply.
That's right.
And therefore you can be ambitious, over ambitious. Ro Khanna, who I know you know, who is probably going to run for president as a lefty in 2028. He gave a speech recently. He said, look, our ambitions, Democrats, we always limit our ambitions. As you just pointed out, ACA, we can't go there. We'll go here.
They negotiate against themselves.
Meanwhile, Republicans are like, well, we're just going to annex Greenland. You're like, huh? Did you poll test that? Did you focus group it?
Right.
Democrats are sitting there getting every focus group, every policy consultant to check every policy for costings and how is it going to be received. And Donald Trump's like, I'm going to invade Greenland. And that is the difference right now. And I think the next Democratic presidential candidate, and I say this only half seriously or only half jokingly, depending on how you want to view it. The next Democratic candidate has to be able to stand up and say, I'm going to give you a $30 minimum wage.
Right.
And when the press say, well, how are you going to pay for that? Oh, I fucking will. Believe me, it's going to be amazing. I'll do it in day one. 24 hours, you will have a $30 minimum wage, right? You have to be able to say this stuff.
Emil?
And say it with a straight face. Look, you got to be on another level of insane if you're going to run in this political environment. And what Joe Biden tried to do, what President Obama tried to do, and even what President Clinton did, is they kept trying to appease to a logic that was no longer there. That logic had been started eroding in the Reagan era and accelerated under George W. Bush, and has met its warp speed, cruising speed under Donald J. Trump. I'm not saying that the Democrats are more realistic than the Republicans. What I'm saying is that the Republicans have lost all semblance of realism in their politics. And when I say that, I mean it this way. They keep cutting taxes for the rich when we know that doesn't work for the economy. The economy grows when you help poor people get more money, because poor people use more of their disposable income. We know that. That's been studied to death by conservative, by progressives.
It's only 3% more, though. It ain't as much more as we think.
But what I'm saying is the net effect of helping the lowest part
more
of the
people
economy,
use more money, though. I do understand.
more people use more money, and that elevates everyone. And that's the part that I think people don't see from the Republicans. And the Democrats, to their discredit, haven't said, look, we're going to do some insanely hard things, and we don't care if the Republicans are on board. They keep trying to appeal to this bipartisanship, and the problem is we're not in bipartisan America. We weren't in it since the Reagan era. We just look like it because we had some momentum from previous administrations. By the George W. Bush administration, we were not in a bipartisan era, despite whatever legislation you saw, and the proof is now. So what we need to see from the Democrats is just as outrageous stuff on the left as we're seeing on the right, which is not a good formula for reducing extremism, but it is a good formula for winning elections. And that's what the Democrats need to do right now.
So let me say this real quick, and Leo, I'll let you close us out. I still would tend, right or wrong, I would tend to say that a lot of what we see is based on who we now have in that office. That brings the extremities that, in my opinion, that makes Madera has to say, hey, this is what you got to say. I think it's a direct response to the ego that we have now. I don't know that it's necessarily a 30, 40-year erosion to the extent that you just mentioned. Again, that's just my quick thought to what you had to say. Go ahead, Leo.
Republicans made sure that they ended up with the vote being in their favor. And what that did, it put the pen in their hand. And while the pen is in the president's hand, he is making it count for the people that empowered him into that office, right? So look, Democrats, everything that gentleman just said in that last clip, I agree with, because if you're going to be a party of the working poor, of, that's going to rise up the standard of living for all people, if you're going to be that, then use your pen. Next time you get into office, use your pen in an absurdly committed way to those people, and it'll make America better.
Hey,
but I won't join a party that won't stand for me.
Hey, I respect that. Matter of fact, let me go out. I'm going to close out. Y'all don't have to respond to this, but I think I got a cut that just fits kind of what you just talked about. Again, they're just taking a shot, because at the end of the day, we need these legislators to step up. So some of it comes in not only us complaining online, but hopefully y'all understand what the goal of this show is to continue to raise your conscience level. And when there are opportunities for you to go out and engage, we've provided opportunities on this show, whether it was events that came to, local states and things of that nature. We will keep you informed on how you can get more engaged, because just saying it ain't enough, and doing this show ain't enough. But at the end of the day, hopefully we will get you to actually act. And as Leo said, people writing letters, things of that nature, get to know your local congressperson. That's where it starts, more so than the president. We put too much fervor into the office that affects us the least. Your local offices actually have a direct effect on you, whether you're paying attention or not. Like we were able, just to highlight this for our new watchers, just a couple of weeks ago, we were able to say, hey, there's an election taking place that's going to control our water and our heating and things of that nature. If you didn't know about it, and very few people voted in it, but the people that voted got to have a say on whether their prices went up on their heating and stuff like that. So these are the type of things that we use Trump like every other media does to say, hey, let's start the conversation. But at the end of the day, your engagement is our ultimate goal. So that's how I'll close out the show. Let me see if I can find. Matter of fact, I'm just going to close out the show. We'll play that clip next time. Thank y'all for a great show, y'all. Stay on in the back real quick, Emil.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, y'all. Make sure y'all subscribe to the page and share this show. If you like what we're doing, make sure you're sharing it. Let's grow the political consciousness through your efforts. Thank y'all for all the comments, but also share it to others who want to have these higher level, no propaganda shows. I'll let y'all.